Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Season 2, Episode 4 of Hunters. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. This episode does something I was curious whether or not that's the direction they were going to handle the whole Meyer and Ruth situation. It now adds a certain context to, hey, why he started to hunt in the first place. My thing is, I try to look at it from a more positive front of like, well, you already hunted a Nazi beforehand, and when Ruth came to you for this because you have this weird thing with her, because you're trying to be Meyer, who was in love with Ruth, but also you as William Zooks have a thing for Ruth, so you were trying to be there for her, and as he talked about, like, oh, it gave me a new purpose and everything, now it brings into question the entirety of Season 1, because now you have the perspective of when Ruth first showed up, and he was like, it's, and she's like, you, and you're like, there's a part of him that, like, you could tell panicked because he didn't know if she knew or not. I mean, he just dealt with everything with Victor Fronheim, who knew everything about him, and so now it's a thing of, well, does Ruth actually know? And she came to him about this, and they visited so many people. Now we also don't know if, when they went to the Attorney General was like, right, when Ruth left the room, he was like, actually, I'll look into it. And Maya was like, nope, you don't have to. You really don't have to. I'm doing this just to placate her. How many of those other people were going to look into it until Meyer told them no? Or maybe the Attorney General probably, the fact that they showed it must mean the Attorney General was the only one, but it implants that seed in your mind that he could have said no to everyone because he didn't want Ruth digging too, because if anyone else found, like, he can't take the chance any other hidden Nazis here, they might actually know about me. Who knows who else, like, Fronheim might have let that slip to, that I'm here, so, and that I'm Meyer Alferman. He sent one person after me. That's at least the two people who potentially know are dead, and I burned at least some of my file, if not all of it. So, he didn't want Ruth, like, that's why he set up the hunt. It was his suggestion that they do this. That's what I was wondering, because I was kind of under the impression, like last season, kind of makes you almost think it might have been Ruth's suggestion. It's like, no, it was his, because he wanted to control the narrative. He wanted to control the situation, probably control which Nazis they should go after, so it's like, okay, let's see if they know who I really am, or wipe them off the board because they might know. I'm like, so now, like I said, now he wanted to make it seem like it was some justified crusade. Once again, he got so caught up in the part of playing Meyer Alferman, he started to believe that. Or maybe the entirety of it was complete and utter BS. Maybe the fact is that it was all about self-preservation, which, to be fair, all of this is about self-preservation. Once again, making it so that none of what happened, the Holocaust, the genocide of millions, never happens again. But in his case, it's self-preservation on his own side of things, because he didn't want to take the chance that his truth would ever be uncovered. And if he could have Ruth at arm's length while he's doing that, one, he gets to be beside her like he always wanted to. Two, he gets to find out, hey, whether or not she really, really knows whether it's me or not. And three, he gets to keep her at arm's length, like, in case they make any discoveries along the way. So the question is, Ruth probably, if she went to where, if she was ever able to visit the doctor she was going to before she ended up getting killed, she probably could have found out about Meyer on her own. Maybe. I don't know. Like I said, it brings the entirety of Season 1. I mean, the entirety of Season 1 was already brought into question the moment we found out Meyer wasn't Meyer. But now it adds, like, he wanted to at least pretend like, oh, I lived as a Jew for so long, I was all about this righteous cause. But now it's like, you wanted to make it seem like you were so different, but it's like, no, William Zooks has always been there, like I've said time and time again, and it's just that self-preservation of hiding who you've been this entire time, hiding yourself because you don't want to cast away the ultimate role that you've been playing your entire life, which is ironic considering he goes to an actor like Lonnie and slaps some sense into him, like bullets on Mars too. He's like, what the fuck is this? Really? He's like, really? He's like, you used to do Hamlet, Othello, and now you're doing this schmuck. You know, this schlock is what I'm meant to say instead of schmuck. But it's like, oh, I told him a story of his grandfather. Now, part of me wonders is that a true story or not? Because Lonnie doesn't really know nothing about his grandfather because he's like, yeah, my dad never talked about him. So he's like, yeah, your grandfather, he died at the camps. He freed some of those people in those cages by being there, by being that theater person, by, putting on performances for him. Eventually they shot him twice dead, but for a few moments, he was able to free everyone in those cages by captivating him with their performances. Now the question is that true or not? And Kalani's like, yeah, a man came to me, kind of gave me a purpose, told me I could be my grandfather. Now I know he didn't know my grandfather. He had said like, no, I didn't know your grandfather personally, but I knew these stories. And that's the thing about Zooks. He could spin a story. But who knows? Because once again, not all of those stories were his. They were other people's stories he told to spin them as his own. But who knows how true that is? Where the truth is and where the lie is, we will never know now that he's gone. But for Lonnie, it gave him a purpose. It got him cleaned up. He felt like this was it. I get to be the ultimate role. I get to play this role that I was given, like being Leonard instead of Lonnie. And he got to but now it's like, yeah, that was all BS. That's what got him sober, was this fight. And he stayed sober for that fight. And we find out after Roxy left, he fell apart because I kept saying Shava last episode. Hava and sent George, Lonnie, and Roxy to go investigate, trying to find out, I think the people who kind of helped Hitler disappear, I think. Or maybe kept him in a certain place for some point in time. So they ended up going. But even George was like, yo, Lonnie's kind of a mess. Do we really need to take him? And they ultimately do. And Lonnie, blows up at Roxy the moment Roxy finds out he's been getting high. That this isn't the first time he's gotten high, that he was already getting high. I mean, he was getting high in the last operation, but also before Jonah and Millie found him. And it's like, right, I started all of this the moment you left, because for her, it's like, I have so much I have to live for, my daughter and everything, and you're putting that in jeopardy. You're putting everyone in this team at jeopardy by you being high. But for him, it's like, I did it because of you. So George goes off to talk to him, and it's like, right, he's like, you're a terrible actor. Not because of your movie roles or anything, but because of Lonnie Flash. You are terrible as Lonnie. You need to basically embrace being Leonard. So it's almost that parallel between what Meyer was saying to him and what George is saying to him. They're both kind of saying the same thing. In this case, it's like, right, that's the ultimate role that God gave you to play. And that's going to be the person that Roxy can fall in love with. So, which obviously for Lonnie, it's like, man, God, you're so gorgeous. You're you're sexy. And it annoys me how hot you are, essentially. I added my own flair to that. Excuse me. Regardless, tangents and all that aside. But that side of things ended up kind of being a bust to some extent because it wasn't Hitler. It was one of his other people. Was it Mengele? But it turns out he died 3 months prior because he had a stroke when he was swimming or something like that. And it's like, the family's like, yeah, we didn't know who he actually was. But the fact of the matter is the Crow showed up, paid them $2 million, which is like, yo, we'll never have to work a day in our lives. So they accepted money. Once again, they had no idea who he was when they so they were told just to forget about everything, and they did. So that was kind of a loose end. That was kind of a dead end on that front. Which I think the irony behind that whole situation is we'll circle everything together, but ultimately George being the one that died, which is funny because Hava was the one that's like, yeah, take Lonnie with you, and if he dies along the way, I mean, who cares? It's all greater sacrifices for them. It's like, yeah, ironically enough, Jonah's people are going to be the one that survived, and one of your people ended up dying in the process. It's like, that's the beautiful irony of it. I mean, to be fair, it's because, jumping ahead a little bit, but also, tying into that is Joe. Joe pulled the trigger, not only, I mean, and I was kind of scared he was going to shoot Roxy. He did, but not the headshot he did George. George, it was like a boom headshot. But with Roxy, he hesitated, and even then, he still like shot her like in like the shoulder or something like that. But it's because, and that was something the Colonel was saying. Like Ava was like, "Oh, like be careful of Joe because you don't know how he's going to react upon seeing his team." The fact is, love can be so buried deep, that it can do something to someone, and you never know whether or not that's going to be. Don't know what will ultimately happen, and because it could have gone either way, and it kind of did, but kind of didn't, because he still pulled the trigger regardless. So, but speaking of Hava, I thought that was kind of interesting. Jonah having to explain everything to Clara, which I brought it up last episode. It's like, well, he didn't have to lie too much. I mean, there's enough there for him to tell the truth while also still lying. So it's like, he tells that, yeah, Millie's an FBI agent, which is true. Grandmother's murder. The fact of the matter is, I found out I have a great aunt who's still alive and she's here. That's what this is all about. It's like, okay, cool. I want to meet her. It's like, yeah, let's have lunch today. You're like, okay. I was like, oh boy. And he brings this up to her, and I love that. It's just kind of like Hava's reaction, like she's walking around with a knife. It's like, this lady saw one name on a notepad, came all the way here, ended up getting on a plane and coming all the way here. I think this woman might be a little unhinged, which is funny with her saying that with a large knife in her hand. Just Jonah's looking at her, and she's like, what? It's like, come on. Like, the fact is, I love her. She's great. Because Hava's all about like, hey, like, let her go. The fact of the matter is the mission is too important. You just gotta dump her. Say that everything you did was a lie. That the fact is there actually is another woman. You have no great aunt that you discovered. Boom, done. I mean, that's the whole point. What he had to do back in season 1 was push everyone away for this role. But it's like, no, I want a life after this. I don't want this to define every aspect of me. Once again, we bag and tag Hitler. I mean, we will kill Hitler, and then I'm done. I want a normal life afterwards. I even love he kind of guilts Hava by being like, the fact of the matter is, when my grandmother died, when Ruth died, when your sister died, you didn't reach out to me. You knew I was there, but you never reached out. You owe this to me. So she kind of plays along. So when, I love when she shows up, and then Hava's like, oh, and she's putting on this role, and Jonah's almost like, what? She's kind of playing a little bit like, almost like Ruth, almost playing a role like Ruth, which I was like, oh, that's so interesting. And Jonah's like, okay, here you are putting on this performance. But she kind of makes it clear, like, they're having the conversations, and she kind of shuts down anything related to Clara, because she's like, oh, your family are art collectors. Oh, isn't that interesting? The rich enjoying taking stuff from other people and making it seem like it's their own. Because regardless of what she's doing, it's kind of like, I can understand. I mean, that's why a lot of people have beef with, like, I mean, art collectors in general and museums. That's why people have beef with them in those regards. But it's also like, especially considering from the Jewish community, like, how much was stolen from them, especially during the war. It's like, yeah, like, you're going to feel a certain way. It's like, oh yeah, this isn't yours, and you're just holding on to it just because it's yours, type of thing of like, oh, you paid for it, now you're just like, I'm gonna collect this thing and it's mine, when in actuality it isn't. So things were already kind of rocky from the start. But it's like, oh, you're gonna have a Jewish wedding, and they're not. And obviously Hava took that as being like, oh, like, like, you're doing this for her, aren't you? But it's like, she's like, no, I learned everything about she learned everything she could about it's like, I love everything about Jonah, even as Jewish. Like, I've learned what I can about that. And if he wanted to have a more like traditional like Jewish wedding, I would like happily do that, because I love him with all my heart and he loves me with all his heart. And it's like, yo, she starts spitting off stuff, and even Hava was almost like, okay. And when she went to the bathroom, it's like, that girl's too good for you. I was like, I love that. You're telling me to break up with her because it's just like, oh, focus on the mission. But now it's like no, that woman is too good for you. Especially because we found out that Hava had someone in her life, Zev. And it's like, they were together for 20 years. They met in the line of work, I guess, the Nazi hunting business, whatever, or not unless she's talking about the I can only assume that's the work she's talking about, but she's like, right, whoever it was, you were lucky to be able to have someone who loved you, and as great as you are for 20 years. That's amazing, you know? And she wants something like that. But for Hava, it's like, yeah, this person, started to believe that the work, wasn't as important. And eventually, she was like, no, the work takes precedent. It's above everything else. And then you had Clara finding out about everything. She ended up discovering all the Nazi hunting stuff. And you're like, the fact is that Hava never bothered like closing that door. I was like, she did that on purpose, didn't she? It feels like that was on purpose. Like, you could have easily closed and locked that door or something. Like, the fact is you left it cracked open just in case she did. I almost halfway expected her to find Home Dude still in a cage there. I'm assuming they killed him. Like, we never saw that on screen, so I assumed he was still there, but no, he wasn't. But she discovered all this other stuff, guns, knives, all this stuff about hunting Nazis, and she confronts him about it, and Hava is like, yeah, we hunt Nazis. Isn't that right, Jonah? Yeah, like Jonah and the whale. So it's like, yeah, everything you've known about Jonah is a lie. This is our crusade. And Jonah's trying to explain everything to her. What she does is like, right, my grandmother was killed. She was doing this job. She was hunting Nazis. And then the fact is I find out that, yeah, a Nazi's the reason why she died, and that's why I'm doing this. I discovered dozens of Nazis doing what we do, and so it's like, this is my fight. I don't want this to define my life. That's why I kind of changed my name. Like, I wanted to leave Jonah behind and be Sam, to be the man that you could be in love with, and kind of leave all this behind, as like leave Jonah and all of this behind. But for Clara, it's like, no, now that I know, you can't really do that, but Travis shows up and pops off. I was scared. I was thinking like, oh my God, are you going to do another Murray? You're going to I was like, are you going to kill Mindy partway through the season? Because she's up in a room recuperating, watching Argentinian soap operas. And she's like, oh, they think I'm old. And it's like, she's like, you know how I know I'm not old, Murray? Is because, which is also even heartbreaking, because I guess it's like, she still talks to him even all these years later. But I don't think she sees. I mean, who knows if she still sees him like she did back in season 1 for that little bit, or whether it's just kind of like, oh, I'm talking to you, like, you know, in the spiritual sense, and they're just kind of looking up, and I know you're out there somewhere. I know you're with Aaron, and we'll be reunited one day. And I'm like, that's why I'm kind of scared that Mindy won't make it, because she'll probably sacrifice herself and be okay with it, because it's like, oh, I'll finally be reunited with my husband and my son. But that's, for her, it's like, that's how I know I'm not old, because we were supposed to grow old together. So, I mean, luckily she ended up helping when the Travis situation went down. I was like, oh, thank goodness. But I was scared. I was like, oh, okay, good. Travis didn't hear it, because I was scared he was going to blah, 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 blah. But luckily, Mindy got down in time, so that turned into a whole thing. And Travis, doing what he does, ends up taking Clara as hostage and bounces. So that sucks. So you got that. You've got Millie finding out from Danny, being like, hey, you know that character of yours? Make it so that what she does isn't ever wrong or something like that. Or I forgot what she exactly told him, but he's like, Millie, what did you do? The FBI, the feds are looking for you. And you're like, oh boy. And she still hasn't told the squad about that. I mean, the FBI can't really do much, but it's like, if she goes back to the States, she's screwed. So, and she still hasn't told anyone. She ends up going with Rebecca, because Rebecca got a name from her Shava, and it's like, okay, so, because now Shava's put it in her like, oh yeah, like the team could get sacrificed. She's like, oh, it must be, I get it. It's hard lying to the people you love and care about. She's like, no, don't say that to me like, you know. You didn't have to lie to Ruth. I did. I was on the team with her. You made me lie to her, and I had to bite the bullet on that situation. So I had to carry that guilt for you. So it's not like you had to fully carry it. But it's like, yeah, like we are all entitled basically to our past, me and you. And she ends up giving Rebecca a name, and ends up finding the man she's been looking for this entire time. Which we also got her recruitment in the episode too. I'm assuming eventually next episode we'll get Mindy, Murray, and maybe Roxy's too. I don't know if that's all going to be in one episode or there's going to be two separate episodes, but the parallels of the squad getting put together, them doing their first things with just things coming to an end. I love that parallel. Everything kind of coming full circle to some extent. It's kind of like using Arrow, for example. It's like the flashbacks in Arrow catching up to like the beginning of the series. Like I think stuff like that's always still fascinating. But regardless, so in this situation, Meyer went to Harriet knowing exactly who she was. And I guess it is kind of surprising she is as good with children as she is. But maybe there is also like, well, the sister thing that you kind of got going for you, but also I guess it's someone who kind of had like their childhood kind of taken from them because of the circumstances, that maybe that makes her overly more willing to kind of keep that innocence for children. I mean, she's still not, she even threatened to kill Meyer in front of like those kids if she needs to, but he's like, no, good. I need that fight. I need you to be who you are. I know who you really are, Rebecca. I know about why your father put you on that train and what ended up happening to him. And that line was heartbreaking when he was like, how long did it take you before you found out basically your father lied to you about why he put you on that train? And she's like, never. And he's like, what? She's like, you asked me, when did I find out the truth about me? She's like, never. I never figured it out because there was still a part of me that's always hoped that my father would always come back to me and I'd be in his arms again. So I never accepted that, that was a lie. And he's like, your father put you on that train so you could be where you are right now, so that you eventually take up this mission, so that you could finally get off the train. And it's just like, he says such wonderful things, but you're like, I know your ulterior motives, you bastard. That's what makes it that much more heartbreaking. And also, once again, it makes that season finale hit even harder when they all find out the truth about Meyer, like why that hit so hard. And when we were just like strangers put together, like this became a legit family. They did rely on each other. They were important to each other. And now it's just kind of like, for her, it's like, you brought me into the fold on this. And that just sucks, And then we have the situation of her meeting the guy who killed her father. It's like, she's like, right, I tell this story of like a girl whose father put her on the train and made a promise, but that promise became a lie. You are the only one who can give me an answer. Why did my father have to lie? Because you're the man who ended up killing him. And when she had the opportunity, because she was going to like suffocate him with the pillow, he apologized and she stopped. And I guess it's like, for her, it's like, I don't know if that's enough for her, or whether she just doesn't want to kill someone in her father's name, or it's like maybe just a thing of, hey, it's not going to do anything to bring my dad back. I don't know what's going through Harriet or Rebecca's moment. No, because it's not a Harriet moment. That's a Rebecca. That's Rebecca making that choice. So I'm so curious. Like, does she end up changing her mind or what? So that's definitely interesting. This is who the person she's been searching for so long, and now she finally had the opportunity. She didn't do it, which is a neat parallel to Jonah, who finally had an opportunity to take down the person that's kind of been that boogeyman. Both the real boogeyman, I wouldn't even call him, because the boogeyman's kind of like, but it's like this nightmare for his Safta, and it's like, yeah, you ended up being the one to put him down, even though that's not what she wanted. The version of her that was kind of in you, that the light of hers, that was still in you. So crazy episode, a lot of really interesting things. I'm curious to see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.